The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The Texas newspaper, the Dallas Morning News, has endorsed Hillary Clinton for president. So who cares? Well, this is the first Democrat to be endorsed by the Dallas Morning News since before World War II. It endorsed Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1940. The Dallas Morning News says that it really had no choice but to throw its support behind Hillary Clinton. And this is not a liberal newspaper. This is a newspaper that, in its endorsement of Hillary Clinton, still said and made very clear, we're really very skeptical of what it is that Hillary Clinton would do. We're skeptical of the Democratic Party and its platform. But, and to quote, unlike Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton has experience in actual governance, a record of service, and a willingness to delve into real policy, although they are very, very skeptical of the Democratic Party. And for an endorsement of one candidate over another, it's fascinating how even-handed this Hillary Clinton endorsement is. It mentions they're concerned about Hillary's email controversy, but that Donald Trump is just so unprepared, right? So lacking in judgment that they simply cannot endorse him. This is the model for how any reasonable Republican should be feeling. Truly, if you're a reasonable person, even if you're politically conservative, whatever it is that that means to you, but you've got half a brain in your skull, this is how you should see the race. Well, Hillary Clinton may be to my left, but Donald Trump is a systemic danger to the future of not only the United States, but also the world. He is just too dangerous. And in the end, remember, Hillary Clinton is a moderate Democrat. She's not going to do anything insane by historical presidential standards. Now, for many people, neoconservative war hawking is insane. And that's not exactly what I'm getting at. My point is that she will no doubt operate within a completely predictable spectrum. Sometimes we're critical of that. We say, the spectrum is too narrow. The spectrum of valid debate and who can be a national level politician, that spectrum is too narrow. When we're thinking of Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump is outside of that scope, not in a way that we should be happy about, but in a way that we should be very, very scared about. Voting for Donald Trump, as the Dallas Morning News has said, basically means I'd rather the country risk destruction and being an even bigger embarrassment worldwide than it was under George W. Bush, which, let me remind you, was pretty bad, than to have someone I just kind of dislike as president of the United States in Hillary Clinton. Now, the implications in Texas are really pretty minor. Texas is unlikely to go for Hillary Clinton. We've talked about the bigger, longer term project of making Texas blue. Not going to happen this election unless something that I can't even imagine were to happen. Trump is ahead of Hillary Clinton, roughly 50-40 in Texas, 8% for the Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson there. Nate Silver's 538.com has Texas at a 91.3% probability of going to Donald Trump on election day. There's a funny comment that I've seen time and again on the internet in response to the Dallas Morning News endorsement, which was, newspapers are clearly being taken over by left-wing activists, and that's why the Dallas Morning News has endorsed Hillary Clinton. Two thoughts on that. Number one, if the Dallas Morning News is now liberal media, it only proves that this country is even more illiterate when it comes to media literacy than even I thought. And let me tell you, my outlook on that issue is pretty bleak. But number two, let's also recall that an endorsement of Hillary Clinton is not an insanely left-wing endorsement, because we're talking about a very, very moderate Democrat here. So how much does any individual endorsement matter? Not very much. What can an endorsement from a paper like the Dallas Morning News tell us about this race and the dynamics? Actually, quite a bit. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with the situation involving Roger Ailes and Donald Trump. And you might say, David, wait a second. I know about the Roger Ailes situation. Resigned in shame from Fox News with a $40 million golden parachute after being accused of sexual harassment by 20 women. Gretchen Carlson, as I told you yesterday, received a $20 million settlement, in addition to the 2 settlements that I'm not sure on the figures for 2 of the other accusers. And then you've got Donald Trump, who is maybe the most unqualified person running for president in a long time. Those are 2 separate stories. They're not, because Roger Ailes is actually advising Donald Trump. And Gabriel Sherman reports that he interviewed 18 of the women who shared accounts of Ailes offering job opportunities if they would perform sexual favors for him and for his friends, etc., etc. We have a situation here where a vicious misogynist and workplace predator in Roger Ailes is working with the Republican presidential nominee. Why is this not a bigger deal that Donald Trump is being advised by Roger Ailes? If Hillary Clinton were being advised by anyone even remotely approximating this level of vile pond scum behavior, it would be front page news. It'd be Drudge all day. It'd be Alex Jones all day. It'd be Rush Limbaugh all day. It'd be Fox News, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If Hillary Clinton had a similar situation, it would be the top of the hour headlines every single hour. Now, are Ailes and Trump officially working together? Well, I don't know. Here's a tweet that Gabriel Sherman posted where it is a blurry image of Roger Ailes in the middle there getting off of Donald Trump's plane in Phoenix earlier this week. If this isn't officially working together, it's abundantly clear that he is part of an informal inner circle that Donald Trump has. And I'll go even further. Trump himself and others on his team have been accused of similar behavior. We know that Donald Trump doesn't take sexual harassment seriously. His own well-documented, I don't know what to call it, questionable, disturbing behavior with regard to women has been widely documented. His first wife, Ivana Trump, accused him of rape in a sworn deposition, saying that Trump assaulted her in a rage after a plastic surgeon she'd recommended botched Trump's scalp surgery, since she said she didn't mean rape in the literal sense, but she never recanted her description of what happened. Trump's new campaign CEO, the guy who was running Breitbart News, Steve Bannon, has himself been charged with domestic violence and accused of sexual harassment. So there's no doubt that Trump is very, very comfortable around people who have a long history of allegations like these against them, because Trump himself has allegations like these against him, not to mention, and I know that some of the Trumpsters, the Trumpists, I don't know what you want to call them, the Trumpets, they get very mad whenever I mention this, but there is also the allegation of Donald Trump being involved in the rape of a girl who was, I don't remember, 15, 14, or 13 years old at this point. That's there too. Trump's entire campaign is full of racists and homophobes and xenophobes and misogynists. There's nothing surprising about that element. The surprising thing is that it's getting no attention whatsoever, in spite of the fact that the level of perversion among Trump surrogates and inner circle and buddies and advocates and people giving him relatively harebrained advice about his campaign, media essentially silent about it. Okay, I have a few clips from yesterday's Commander-in-Chief Forum. The premise for this event is that NBC and Matt Lauer interviewed Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump separately during a sort of town hall, okay? I'm going to play some clips for you. Matt Lauer cowered in front of Donald Trump. He was feeble and flaccid. He allowed Donald Trump to lie about just about everything. I want to talk about some of the lies. Let's go through this, as I like to do, piece by piece, because there is so much here. One of Donald Trump's favorite lies is, I've always been against the Iraq War. My decision against the Iraq War is a winning decision. It's terrific. It's tremendous. And I knew all along, and I never was for it. I was always against it. Blah, 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 blah. Let's listen first to Donald Trump say that to Matt Lauer.
Prepares you to send men and women of the United States into harm's way?
Well, I think the main thing is I have great judgment. I have good judgment. I know what's going on. I've called so many of the shots. And I happened to hear Hillary Clinton say that I was not against the war in Iraq. I was totally against the war in Iraq. You can look at Esquire magazine from '04. You can look at before that. And I was against the war in Iraq because I said it totally destabilized the Middle East, which it has. It has absolutely been a disastrous war. And by the way, perhaps almost as bad was the way Barack Obama got out.
No challenge from the tiny, diminutive presence of Matt Lauer on this thing, but demonstrably false. I've played it for you before, and I will play it again as many times as I need to. Here is none other than Donald Trump on the Howard Stern show in 2002, saying something that doesn't exactly sound like opposition to the Iraq war. Take a listen.
Really don't know the enemy.
I know, they're skulking around somewhere, and you just feel like you're sitting duck.
But we have an idea who the enemy is, and a lot of times the politicians don't want to tell you that.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. You know, I wish it was. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
Interesting. Not exactly I'm against the Iraq war, is it? But Matt Lauer, coward, and just moved on to the next question. So then Donald Trump said yesterday that he was absolutely right when back in 2013, he blamed sexual assault in the military on men and women serving together in the armed forces. Matt Lauer asked him about that claim, and Trump restated, "I stand by that." Let's go to that piece of video.
The court system practically doesn't exist.
In
It takes too long.
In 2013, on this subject, you tweeted this, quote, 26,000 unreported sexual assaults in the military, only 238 convictions. What did these geniuses expect when they put men and women together?
Well, it is a correct tweet. There are many people that think that that's absolutely correct, and we need to have a
So
strength.
this
and we
should
need
have
to
been
have
expected, and does that mean the only way to fix it is to take women
it's happening.
out of the military?
And by the way, since then it's gotten worse. No, not to kick them out, but something has to be happened. Right now, part of the problem is nobody gets prosecuted. You have reported, and the gentleman can tell you.
So some of what Donald Trump is getting to about the lack of prosecution for sexual assault in the military, it's an issue and it is being dealt with, and I'll talk about that. This is the epitome of the Trump weasel language. It's a correct tweet because there are many people that think the tweet is correct. Not exactly presenting a waterfall of evidence there, is he? Finally, it seems like Matt Lauer woke up during this thing. I don't know what exactly they expected, right? I mean, did you expect men and women of the military to serve together and not sexually assault each other? I really take issue with Trump's characterization that just men and women together is responsible for sexual assault. It's an insult to the troops, really, to say that in spite of the supposed professionalism of the military, there's just no way that these professionals, who people like Trump often like to claim are the best in the world, would be able to resist sexually assaulting each other. I think that that is a huge, huge insult to the military. And we've talked about the mechanisms in the military that are causing these problems. We've talked about the SHARP program, which is pushing a totally zero tolerance policy on sexual assault. We know that intervention training is up. We know that prosecutions are up, etc. This is an opportunity for Trump to, number one, critique Obama for something that actually President Obama has made progress on. And number two, also to just put out there yet another myth, which is that you just can't have men and women together. Even if they're the best professionals in any military on this planet, they can't be together. And lastly, of course, no Donald Trump town hall is complete until he praises Russian President Vladimir Putin. Let's take a look at that video here.
If he says great things about me, I'm going to say great things about him. I've already said he is really very much of a leader. I mean, you can say, oh, isn't that a terrible thing? I mean, the man has very strong control over a country. Now, it's a very different system, and I don't happen to like the system. But certainly in that system, he's been a leader far more than our president has been a leader. We have a divided country.
Yeah.
We have a country where you have Hillary Clinton with her emails that nobody's ever seen, where she deletes.
Right. Russian President Vladimir Putin is a way better leader than President Obama. I like when they cut to, and if you were listening, you wouldn't have seen this, They cut to, so this, I mean, there were a lot of members of the military in this thing. It was sort of the premise of this town hall. They cut to 4 military guys who, I may be reading their facial expressions incorrectly, but they seem very disturbed by the fact that Donald Trump is trying to get himself elected and talking about what a great leader Vladimir Putin is, even though he doesn't particularly agree with the system of which Putin is that leader. That's it. So terrible performance by Matt Lauer. The Hillary Clinton interview was really not much better, but Donald Trump just lying to absolutely no end. And the scary part, and really what keeps me thinking that maybe my view is wrong about these events, is that there are probably low information voters who see this nonsense and think, you know what? Trump sounded pretty good.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is James Burnside. Every single member, including James, really does a lot to support this show, and especially with the turmoil going on right now with YouTube monetization or unmonetization that we've been talking about. Member support has never been more important. So thank you to James, and I encourage everybody to go to davidpakman.com/membership and get a membership today. And you can use coupon code HATRIOT40, HATRIOT40, for a very nice discount off of membership. I've got a recommendation today. That recommendation is for a documentary called Foodies, the Culinary Jet Set. This is on Amazon. It is also on Netflix. It's a documentary about what I would call fine dining subculture, and it follows a number of self-described, or in some cases not self-described, but described by others, foodies around the world. They travel to the most expensive Michelin restaurants. Many of these people are clearly very, very wealthy. Some of them are only wealthy. And it was absolutely fascinating to me, number one, because I'm really interested in how some of these high-end restaurants operate and do marketing, and it's just so different than what you would normally consider to be the advertising plan for a restaurant. But I couldn't decide as I was watching this whether I should be really, really fascinated and interested in the lives of these so-called foodies, or whether I should be incredibly angry and consider throwing my computer out the window because of the just insane pretension that exists within this community. And if you watch it, you need to be ready for some cringeworthy, pretentious stuff as you're watching this film. And I'd be curious to hear from the audience sort of what you think about it, because although I was definitely fascinated by it, and I've never been to a Michelin star restaurant, but I've been to some nice restaurants where you have a tasting menu or whatever. And even at that level, I'm already, when they come over and they say, would you like me to send over the sommelier to make some wine recommendations? I get it. There's an expert in the wine, but something about me just says, it doesn't feel right to be here. There's something that is feeling very, very privileged and like, I don't belong here. And to be honest, if anyone is used to this, it's hard to imagine them being completely in touch with the perils of the average man or woman in our country. But that's just my reaction, because I have such a visceral sort of, I'm very much put off, I guess the right word is, by that entire world. Check it out. Send me your thoughts on it. It is again called Foodies, the Culinary Jet Set. It's on Netflix. It's on Amazon streaming. And you can see all of our recommendations at davidpakman.com/recommendations. Okay, I have what could be good or bad news regarding Fox News. Fox News, for the first time, has been selected to moderate a presidential debate. Yay or something, right? They did a bunch of the Republican primary debates. They did Democratic primary debates, but they have not previously done a national presidential debate. So the Presidential Debate Commission says Chris Wallace is our guy. He's the host of Fox News Sunday. He will moderate the third presidential debate scheduled for October 19th in Las Vegas. I will be in Las Vegas on October 19th, and we will see if we are able to do any sort of special coverage around that debate. So Chris Wallace appears on the program Media Buzz on Fox News to discuss what does it mean to you, Chris, that you've been personally selected to host a debate on Fox News and blah, 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 blah. Really a lot of blowing smoke, I guess is what I would call it. And Howard Kurtz, the host of this program, Media Buzz, asked Chris Wallace, what will you do when one of the candidates makes a claim, says something that you as a journalist know to be false? Good question from Howard Kurtz. Let's see how Chris Wallace answered it.
Well, I understand that. I think that's the right approach, not making it about you. On the other hand, there's a lot on your shoulders, both in terms of the question selection, but also as they go at it, let's say Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, what do you do if they make assertions that you know to be untrue?
That's not my job. I do not believe that it's my job to be a truth squad. It's up to the other person to catch them on that. I certainly am going to try to maintain some reasonable semblance of equal time. If one of them is filibustering, I'm going to try to break in respectfully and give the other person a chance to talk. But I really want it to be about them engage. I want it to be as much of a debate. People often talk that it's...
This is interesting, right? Because on the one hand, it's true generally. The moderator is there to moderate. And you'll remember CNN's Candy Crowley was sort of destroyed by some on the right when she tried to interject just some basic facts during a 2012 debate between Mitt Romney and President Barack Obama. And whether the criticisms were fair or not, there's no doubt that when the moderator attempts to do any kind of fact checking, there is a critique there. On the other hand, we have a candidate in Donald Trump whose entire campaign has been based on lying and deceiving, taking every position on every issue. And the idea that because there's going to be equal time, there's no way Hillary Clinton could possibly even deal with all the lies. And it may be defensible to say, well, the moderator can impose just some connection to reality. There's actually a debate technique called the Gish Gallop. And what this basically means, and you can look this up online and read about it, is you throw out so much stuff where your opponent could not possibly refute all of it, even if it all warrants being refuted. And it can create the perception, particularly in the exact same type of nativist, xenophobic, low information voters that support Donald Trump, that Donald Trump has gotten one over on Hillary Clinton. The other background on this, if we want to look at the associations, is that Chris Wallace is known to have a close personal relationship to Roger Ailes, in addition to professional ties, obviously. Roger Ailes was Chris Wallace's boss up until a few weeks ago when Roger Ailes had to resign in shame, but luckily with $40 million as his golden parachute from Fox News for allegedly sexually harassing 20 women. Roger Ailes now is advising Donald Trump, and it appears it's not a formal advising relationship. It may be informal, but Ailes was on Trump's plane, and he's clearly part of his inner circle. The "it's not my job" thing becomes a little murky because we're talking about a news organization here. Ideally, you would be finding truth and presenting facts. Why even have Chris Wallace moderate if he's not going to be able to do anything? You could get a high school debate teacher and tell him to just click a stopwatch and keep time. If really they're just keeping time, you can set up, I hate to break it to you, Fox News, technology can be set up so that mic volume is controlled by a timer. And when time has elapsed, the mic automatically goes off. And if you really are having the moderator there only to keep time, you actually don't need them. And that's why, although at its face, hey, I'm not a truth squad, I'm there just to keep time. If you're just there to keep time, we don't need you, Chris. I hate to break it to you. I want to talk about jobs and President Obama. There's a bigger question about jobs, right? Do presidents create jobs through their policies, or don't they? If you believe that presidents do create jobs, or at least that their policies influence job creation, then no matter what letter you have after your name on your party registration, you have to praise President Obama because he has presided over the longest streak of total job growth in history, 70 8 months and counting. 7-8. The recent August jobs report shows that businesses have added 15.1 million jobs since early 2010. I have a graphic I'll show you which sort of outlines the way this went, and you will see, of course, President Obama taking office in the first month of 2009, and then a lot of jobs added there. The unemployment rate also down to 4.9%. If Mitt Romney had been elected president and had these numbers, Republicans would be demanding that Romney's face be chiseled into Mount Rushmore right now. And I'll go even further. Do you remember when Mitt Romney was making his predictions for what would happen with jobs if he were president? Mitt Romney said, it's on video, look it up, if I am president, at the end of my first term, unemployment will be down to 6% in January of 2017. And that will be because I will have repealed the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare. President Obama has gotten us to 4.9% unemployment in less time than Mitt Romney said he would need without repealing the Affordable Care Act. Now, if you don't think presidents create jobs, if that's your view, I would debate that with you. I mean, economic policy, trade agreements, tax policy, labor policy, those are all elements that influence job creation, and the president is definitely involved in all of those areas. That being said, I am not here to tell you that everything is just rosy when it comes to wages and jobs and employment. We have a situation as far as wages go that is very, very problematic. We have a situation that is coming towards us like a comet or asteroid or whatever you want to call it. Meteor, I'm not actually sure. Neil deGrasse Tyson told me what the difference is between these, and I am just forgetting. Like one of these big hunks of rock that is, I know one of them is ice. I'm really digging a hole here, but let's move on and go with a different analogy. This is like a huge ship heading towards an iceberg that is too heavy to be steered away. We are getting towards technological unemployment growing. That goes well beyond President Obama or Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or whoever. So I'm not here to tell you there's no concerns in the economy. What I am here to tell you is that using the standards that have been in place for decades for measuring job creation and unemployment, there is no empirical way to deny that President Obama has overseen one of the greatest periods of job creation in the last 150 or more years. Let me take a break. After the break, we've got to just dispel one of these conspiracy theories that has been making the rounds, and I tried to stay away, but the audience has spoken. They want me to address it, so I will after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Every once in a while, it works out that we don't have an interview scheduled, and I'm going to take that opportunity today to address a couple of stories that many in our audience have asked for me to address. The first thing I want to talk about is this conspiracy theory that the Clintons, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, have murdered or ordered killed. I don't think the allegation is they've personally done it. Many of their political opponents, inconvenient individuals who some say were just about to release some kind of horribly damaging information about the Clintons. I've not been talking about it, but so many people have asked me to address it, and I'm going to. It's entirely ridiculous, and I'll explain why. Just to give you a little flavor, because if you haven't been exposed to this, it's actually quite entertaining. Here's just 30 seconds of one of, at this point, it must be 100 or more videos from Alex Jones's InfoWars about this conspiracy theory. They've been pushing it. Check it out.
Before the Clintons left their governorship in Arkansas, more than 100 people had been suspiciously murdered. Hundreds more died during their first terms, and the scourge continues to this day. DNC staffer after DNC staffer that speaks out against election fraud or leaks information to WikiLeaks ends up gunned down And the Clinton crime family and their backers is now in the spotlight.
Yeah, WikiLeaks. I like how he almost sounds like Sean Connery, except I'm less mesmerized by Alex Jones's voice than Sean Connery's. This entire thing makes no sense. And what conspiracists know how to do is focus your attention, right? The conspiracist will show you only the coincidences. They will concoct apparent motives, but they won't really ask the big question. And the idea is people who will stand in the way of the Clinton power grab get killed. And there are websites that maintain lists of all of these people. They range from an Arkansas lawyer named Don Adams to a, quote, influential Texan named James Bunch, who was found dead, and later it was discovered he had a little black book with the names of influential people from Texas and Arkansas who visited certain prostitutes. And the idea is, well, Bill Clinton may have been one of the names on that list, so he was preemptively killed, but the little black book was found anyway. So if there was a conspiracy to knock the guy off, you might have wanted to take care of that little black book. So let's apply some basic critical thinking here, right? This has nothing to do with whether Hillary Clinton would be a good president or a bad president. She might be good, she might not. You might like her politics, you might not. This is unrelated, okay? First of all, the Clintons are one of the most well-known couples in the world, right? We're talking about a former president, a former governor, a former first lady, a former U.S. senator, a former secretary of state, and a current presidential candidate that is the nominee of one of two major American political parties. They've been in politics. It's been, I believe, 38 years since Bill Clinton was elected governor of Arkansas. Do you realize how many people they know? Do you realize how many people a couple who has been involved in this level of politics for 38 years, how many people they are connected to? Statistically, over 38 years, many people are going to die. That's number one. Do you know the number of people connected to Jimmy Carter that have died since he was president of the United States? This argument is not a good argument, and we have to put that aside. Second, and this is where you really have to think this through, when you look at the total number of people here that supposedly were ordered killed by the Clintons, is it 50 people? Is it 100 people? Is it 200 people? Depends who you talk to. When you put aside for a second, just like I said, the sheer number of people that the Clintons clearly know, when you look at each of them individually, the risk was not very big to that person staying alive and outing whatever it was that they had to out. Many of these were, interns, low-level DNC staffers. The risk that someone poses to the Clintons, even if you believe they had something juicy, is so minor that it is so much more risky to order them killed, because in the end, even if these people who were just about ready to expose the evil Clinton, whatever it was that they were going to expose, you're going to be able to, through the Clinton surrogates and through friends in corporate media, you're going to be able to attack the credibility of these individuals. We know that many corporate media outlets are not even going to pick up these stories. One of the main critiques of the right is media won't talk about these Clinton scandals. If they don't talk about Clinton scandals, why would you even need to kill the people who are going to expose the scandals? It doesn't make any sense. It would make no impact. And then lastly, for example, the instance of Hillary stole the primaries and the people that were just about to expose it ended up dying. You've seen how this happens. Look at what happened in Florida in the year 2000. Look at what happened in Ohio in the year 2004. Voting irregularities are alleged all the time, sometimes with what we would consider relatively strong evidence. The investigations drag on for months or years. Very rarely, and really not at all in presidential races, will these exposés from activists and insiders actually flip the results. So when you step back for a second, this doesn't make any sense at all. And if you are believing this, then what you are doing is falling prey to a moneymaker, because Alex Jones and InfoWars and his ilk are making a lot of money off of these theories. This stuff will rot your brain, and you have to apply some critical thinking to it. let me talk a little bit about, I guess I'm going to talk about Costa Rica, but really I want to talk about renewable energy. There have been these headlines circulating that Costa Rica for the last 2 months, something like nearly 80 days, has been running on 100% renewable energy. This is according to a new report. This is the second time in 2 years that Costa Rica has had more than 2 months straight on renewable energy alone. They've had 150 days in 2016 total. Life without fossil fuels is possible, at least for small countries. That's all really, really great. Okay, I am obviously completely in favor of getting off of fossil fuels. However, here's what I really want to talk about. On YouTube, you'll notice that the title to this video has the term renewable energy in quotes. Because when you actually start looking into the power sources that are, quote, renewable in Costa Rica, you realize that it's geothermal, it's wind, it's solar, but 80% of that renewable energy in Costa Rica is hydropower. Is hydropower really renewable energy? Well, many people say no, and I'll tell you about some of those people. In general, when you're talking about hydropower, you're talking about using the kinetic energy of flowing water as it moves downstream to channel it into energy that you can harness and use. The water itself is not reduced. The water itself doesn't become used up. So in that sense, hydropower is defined as renewable energy by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. But hydropower is not unanimously considered renewable because you need dams for many types of hydropower. Dams are very destructive to fisheries. They are destructive to water flows, which can impact fish populations, and they have. The water flow disruptions can impact the sort of sediment table that exists in and around many of these sources of water. We have seen spawning grounds be really made more difficult to access for fish by dams, and as a result, fish populations have gone down. Temperatures can be impacted. Water temperatures in certain areas are impacted by damming. So there is a big movement, and I have to tell you, I am sympathetic to this movement that says, you know, hydro is not really renewable. And I think that there's a sort of different way to think about this. It is, we can call it renewable in the sense that it is not using up a resource. The water flows through and provides energy, and then the water still exists. You're not burning up the water in the way that we are when we're talking about oil or coal, but it is not sustainable. And I think that's really what makes it, for me, a sustainable energy source is one that is, number one, renewable, but also has environmental consequences that are not destructive. And in that sense, I am completely on board in saying, wait a second, I'm all about Costa Rica being 100% on renewable energy, but 80% of that renewable energy is hydro, and hydro is damaging to our planet. What do you think about this? You can discuss this with us on Facebook, facebook.com/David Pakman Show. You can also discuss this with us on Reddit at davidpakman.com/Reddit. And of course, I'm always paying attention to my Twitter feed. You can reach me on Twitter at @dpakman.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
There's a 70-year-old man who is charged with robbing a Kansas City, Kansas bank. He did it for a very unusual reason. He said he wanted to be in a jail cell because he didn't want to be around his wife. I'm talking about Lawrence John Ripple, who's charged in federal court with the robbery of the Bank of Labor on Minnesota Avenue in Kansas City, Kansas. And I've taken a look at the court documents. Ripple showed up to the bank, gave a bank teller a note which said, "I have a gun, give me money." Most banks have a policy where you give someone money, and the teller did exactly that. But then instead of leaving the bank, Ripple took the money, and sat down in the bank lobby, according to the documents. And when a bank security guard came up to him, Ripple said, "I'm the guy you're looking for." The guard took the money back from Ripple. They basically just hung out waiting for police to arrive. And when he was questioned by an investigator, he said, "Yeah, you know, my wife and I had an argument." And he, quote, no longer wanted to be in that situation. He actually wrote out his demand note in front of his wife and told her he'd rather be in jail than at home. And that's exactly what he did, going to a bank and robbing it. Imagine that, right? I can't stand you. I'm going to write myself a demand note and go to the bank to get myself arrested. You can't just use the justice system in this way, can you? I know that many times when there are arguments in couples, you get used to the parameters of the argument. So one of the two people will try to sort of amp it up and do something new to show that they're really serious this time. Except this one's not really reversible because the guy actually went and robbed a bank. And now what could happen is that a judge could hear all of the facts and say, well, I am sentencing you to house arrest. And then it would sort of defeat the purpose of having robbed a bank to be sent to jail and to be away from his wife. Sadly, and this is sort of an odd story, but there are some really sad stories, and we've talked about them, where people will commit a crime because they either need a place to live and they are having trouble finding one in the real world, or they need health care. And you might remember, if you've been listening to the show for a while, that back in 2012, I told you the story of an ex-convict named Frank Morocco, who deliberately went and shoplifted $23 worth of stuff from a Wegmans store, deliberately to get himself in violation of parole and sent back to prison because he had leukemia, he needed health care, and he was out in the world without health care. And that is so horrifying. And as you know, the United States, one of the few countries where there's such a thing as bankruptcies caused by being unable to pay healthcare bills, and that is absolutely insane. Now, as far as the 70-year-old man wanting to be in prison to be away from his wife, top level, he didn't kill his wife, and that's a good thing. Anytime, I mean, I think that this was a sort of silly use of the justice system, but if this prevented him from becoming violent with his wife, then that is something good. He will also likely end up, I mentioned this is in federal court. If he ends up in federal prison rather than state prison, usually federal prisons are better. I'm sort of really digging here to find some kind of silver lining. Big picture, many times people say and do things that they really don't mean during arguments. It's good to keep in mind that there are some actions you can't really undo. And I think this absolutely qualifies there. Hey, this is something really cool. I just like this, okay? We take calls regularly now, and we'll have some calls on tomorrow's show, the Friday show. We have a voicemail number people can call, and sometimes people call there. And sometimes it will come to my attention that somebody called in or left a voicemail, and then we used it on the show, and that person saw that we used it on the show, and they loved it. And I want to play for you just a little bit of a video that a caller recently made on YouTube. And I don't know why, I just love the fact that he's so happy that he was on the David Pakman Show. Check this out.
What up, YouTube? It's Political Monkey here today to talk to you guys about my debut on the David Pakman Show. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link right there. Never in a million years that I think David would actually answer my question. However, I'm very pleased that he actually has. Now, my question was regarding my previous notion that the David Pakman Show was actually affiliated with TYT, which they are no longer affiliated with TYT. Thank Jesus, I love the David Pakman Show, and I would be absolutely disappointed if the show was infected with this SJW cancer.
Yeah, so then he goes on to trash the Young Turks, and I have no interest in that part whatsoever. But hey, this is Political Monkey is the moniker he uses on YouTube. I love that someone was this excited about getting their voicemail played on the show, or rather, this was a voicemail, not a live call. It's absolutely fantastic. We love having audience voices on the show, and this was very, very cool to see. Of course, the voicemail number is available 24 hours a day. That's 2192-DAVID-P. The call-in number is different. The call-in number is 617-830-4750. And those two numbers clearly making dreams come true every day. And that is just, that is absolutely just fantastic. And the live calls, by the way, have been going so well. We have basically, we'll take calls for 15, 20. Sometimes we can carve out as much as 22 or so minutes on the Friday show to take calls. And when we're done, the calls just keep coming in. I mean, the phones just ring off the hook, and we love hearing from people. So that is just absolutely fantastic. Speaking of voicemails, I do have a voicemail line. That phone number is 219-2-DAVID-P, 219-2-DAVID-P. Here's a voicemail I received in the last day or two. Let's take a listen.
Hey, David. I love your show, and I watch you on YouTube almost every day. And I was curious about whether you have more viewing on YouTube or on television, because as much as I love your show, I would have no idea that my dad actually watches you regularly on Free Speech TV. When I walked in the room, I said, "That's David Pakman. You watch him?" I didn't even know he was on TV. So I was just wondering if you could elaborate on how much of your audience is from TV and how much is from YouTube. Thanks.
Yeah. Listen, you can watch the David Pakman Show anywhere. It doesn't make a big difference to me as long as you are getting what you want out of it. We are on TV. We are on YouTube. It's all absolutely fantastic, and peace and love, and we love it all. So great for everybody who's watching no matter what. On today's bonus show, we will talk about Apple eliminating the headphone jack from future devices. What does that mean? A lot of people not really understanding what's going on with that. A lot of questions about what I have been reading lately. I will talk about that a little bit. We do have an upcoming David Pakman Show planned vacation, and I do want to mention that. Tell people about it so that there are no surprises when we do start our vacation. And of course, there is only one way to get access to the bonus show, and that is by signing up for membership at davidpakman.com/membership. And if you like, if you're up for paying the regular membership price, thank you. That's absolutely great. If the normal prices present any level of financial hardship for you, we do have a coupon code, which is Patriot40, HATRIOT40, which will give you a very, very nice discount off of the membership of your choosing. You enter that in the coupon code when checking out. I recommend doing it. I've never heard of anything better than being a David Pakman Show member, but I know that I'm probably hearing only from people who are big, big fans of the show. I look forward to talking to you on the bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.